Okay, so welcome. This is the re-recorded video covering doing the Naruto run cycle. So we're changing things up from more of a from doing a simple basic run cycle to something with a little bit more character to it. So I thought we'd change it up with a Naruto run, which is kind of like a quick dash, basically. So here we're gonna shouts out to Miss Elise Zuber, I'm getting that right, for this reference, which is great because there's two references on here. There's a 12 frame cycle, which is essentially 6 frames for each leg being the lead leg for a cycle of 12. But that doesn't match up with our Alan Becker reference, so we're going to try and use the Alan Becker reference to inform our understanding of this 8 frame cycle, which is essentially the same as 4 poses for each leg leading to a total of 8 for the cycle. So you can see here, for example, this is a kickoff pose. So our kickoff pose is a lot more energy and forward lean than this kickoff pose in this sort of jog that is the Alan Becker reference cycle. So then you can see, so let me scroll back and play. So scroll this back. And then so I'm using the caret keys that are between M and the right shift key, so that's the period and comma key on your keyboard. And that'll bring you 1 frame at a time. So you can see, again, I'm looking at the 8 frame reference, right? You can see as I cycle through this, so that is our equivalent of a pass pose here. And then we have our kickoff pose. Then we have our up pose. Then we strike a contact pose. Pass pose. Kickoff pose. Up pose. Right? So I'm going to cycle it all the way back to... I like to start with my right leg in front. So here is a right leg contact pose. So that's where I'm going to start with mine. And I'm using Caroline for my example today. Doesn't matter which one you use. There's one part where I'll show you to curl the fingers. You're just going to have to do that manually if you're using Henry. And I'll show you how you would do that if you're using Henry when I get to that part. So we are going to use Caroline for this. I'm going to pause real quick. Okay. So here we are with Caroline. We're going to frame 1. And quite simply, we're just going to start with our right leg. Let's just get this positioned well out in front of us. We are definitely going to stretch her leg for a second. I'm thinking maybe somewhere around there might be the play. We'll roll this foot pivot back significantly because she should be striking out hard with this. And we'll set that for now. We may need to move it in a second. So one thing about this run is it is actually quite close to the ground. So I'm going to bring these hips down quite a bit. And you're always looking at this at the knees here when you're dropping down this diamond, this hip controller. So just want the slightest amount of bend. You know, on our example, it's more or less straight, but you don't want it to be very obvious when the knees are bending quite a bit. So let's go ahead and grab this left leg now. And let's take a look at our reference again. So here is the video reference. We're going to see pretty, I would say, sharp 90-degree angle here at the pelvis for how these the legs are coming away from the hips. And just over a 90-degree angle, maybe about 110, and the bend here at this knee with our left foot pointing way back. So, and let's take a look at that comparatively to our contact pose on this. Again, we're accentuating, we're hanging this leg out way far back because we're taking big long strides to move fast on this. This is more of a jog. we're going for a dash, a sprint. So, and then again, you can see the angle of this is much more acute here. The knees are much closer to each other, whereas in this, there's quite a bit of distance between the knees. So let's bring this way, 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 way back, right? And we're getting that 90-degree bend here. Then we will go ahead and lift this up. And see, as I bring this foot up, it's giving me extra. Okay, so we want to get that 90 degrees here. And then obviously this is bent. I think that's the foot pivot. We want to pivot that up. And then also, if we're looking at this, the foot is pointed backwards. So we're going to have to rotate this in addition to using the foot pivot. So we'll basically rotate it like that. And then we're just making sure that we don't want to break the foot of the rig. So it looks like this, probably just roll this back a little bit. Our mileage will vary comparatively to our reference because the rigs just operate a little differently. You can't always replicate things as exactly as they do. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And again, we're trying to maintain 90-degree angle here, just over 100 degrees, 110 degrees here in this angle. And so we're making sure we got our feet keyframed, we got our hips keyframed, and then let's do our pelvis. So we're striking with our forward foot is our right foot. So we want to rotate this to bias towards our right side. We also want to bias this hip down because we have our weight on this leg now, right now. So again, forward, this is our forward foot. Downward because we're putting our weight down on this. And then also roll the hips just slightly back on the X. One final thing, you can see her eyes. They will track her little spectacles here. So before I go any further, because I'm still on frame 1, I'm going to bring her eye line. I'm just going to drag this way out here so that her eyes, as she runs, are more or less staying forward, and I'll even bring this down a little bit. Yeah, okay, we'll just keyframe that. So we will do our upper body for frame 1, and then that way we'll go back and just finish it after the fact. But for right now, tongue is still visible. That's another thing you may want to turn off if you're using Caroline. Visibility control. Tongue to 0, that will get rid of that control there. So useful if you're doing lip sync, not useful for us right now. Okay. So pretty good. So far so good. In fact, might bring this. You know what, let's not get into that. Let's just leave that as it is. Okay, anyway, back to what we were doing. We're going to need to mess with this pelvis actually more in a second. So first thing we're going to do, let's rotate our back down. So you can see I'm holding shift and clicking on each of these controls that control different segments of your spine. If I go to the rotate tool, I can rotate these quite a bit. Again, be careful with that. You don't want to roll the back over too much. Neck is a little interesting. So let's bend our neck back to a reasonable position. In fact, I think I might want to rotate this upper control back a little bit. And then this halo, I believe, controls the head on the neck controller, so that way I can get her to look forward again. So we'll keyframe that. We'll keyframe this neck control, and then don't be like me. I'm on the select tool, selecting each of these, keyframing those. And then also you're going to want to take the diamond, rotate that a little bit. So we want to get our torso into this run. And possibly even down a touch, actually, now that we've bent it. So again, we're looking at the forward leg. We want to see the slightest amount of bend in that knee. Okay. Then you have this hip. I think we do need to rotate this hip a little bit. Slightly more forward, actually. There we go. And now if we go back and look at our reference, we're looking at our shoulders here. Pretty even, neutral shoulder right here. So I just need to rotate my clavicles back because we want to get these arms. Let's roll the arms up a little bit and down a little bit. Want to roll our shoulders back. Keyframe that. Let's grab my clavicle again. Just want to roll our shoulders up a little bit. Back a little bit. Whoops. Other way. Back a bit. Up a bit. And then, keyframe that. Then we'll just take our arm sockets. Not quite, my guy. So rotate them back like this. Back like this. All right, keyframe, keyframe. Okay. Boom. Naruto run. So, quick pause. All right, so picking back up, we're looking at our completed frame 1. And then just for sake of getting our key poses done, we're just gonna put things on 5s here. So I'm gonna go to frame 5. And again, we're going to be looking at both our references. So reminder again, if you click off on the video, just click back in the timeline somewhere, then use your frame forward key. So here we are on the right side contact. Now we're on, again, our right side is our lead leg in the passing pose. And let me scroll this up. So again, we're looking at our example. Pass pose, nothing, the major things are there. So we have a bent, our lead leg is bent. We're putting our weight heavily onto it as we bring our back leg forward. Straightforward, right? And you can see, so the differences are significantly more bent, more weight down on our forward foot for the Naruto pose. And then also you can see the sharp angle that we are bringing the foot at. Trying to drag it forward as the hip translates and brings the knee forward. So the knee is much farther back than it is in our reference because we're trucking, so there hasn't been enough time or as much time for our knee to move that extra distance, which is really going to help when we get into our kickoff because it's going to snap pretty far forward as we get into our kickoff pose. So it's going to give it that snappiness to it. All right, so let's start with our right foot. First things first, I like to just zero this out. Bring it to the front or bring it to the middle. We'll zero that out. And then typically, we'll just bias this forward a little bit. So not directly back at 0, basically. A little bit still in front of us. And we can look at the pose and see the back of the ankle is in front of the hips, so that all tracks. And then let's bring this forward. Now for this, we have a nice sharp acute angle here. Foot still mostly pointed back, so I'm not even gonna really mess with this. In fact, I might even, yeah, okay, let's rotate that a little bit. And so let's analyze, it's mostly, yeah, mostly straight down. It's pretty good. Might bring this up just a touch, actually. Okay, great. And then let's look at, let's analyze how do these hips translate on here. So the hips are up a little bit, okay? So we'll just bring this up a tad. Don't need to do much. We're not gonna worry about the upper body for right now. We're just gonna continue our poses for the legs. So with this one, we still have our weight on this leg, so we still want our hips in that direction. I think that we might, here, I'll zero out my rotate Y. Yep, and then slight tilt forward. Okay, so I basically undid nothing. Great. Fine with me. So we're all good there. Make sure we have a keyframe there. Make sure we got a keyframe on this. Great. And both of our feet. Great. And then we'll go from there. So let's go to frame 10. All right, so let's, again, click on this. One frame forward. So look at the snappiness of where that knee goes. From here to here. So, pass pose, now we're to here. So let's get this right leg. Oh, and also before I forget, let's take a look at the hips too. So we're here, here. So the hips are gonna come up, right? We're kicking off the ground. You can see how the hips move up in the air. So in fact, I think what I'll do is I'll pick up the hips here, and then that way I can bring this leg as far back as possible. I believe our toe is pointed backwards essentially on this, so we'll maximize our foot pivot. Yep. Bring it back more. And because we're not a cartoon, I think I will. Yep, we'll do that. And so we're looking for just the slightest amount of bend left in the knee. Great. So we got that. We got this. This. If we're looking at our knee and our reference, right? And again, let me pull this up so that we can see. The knee is about the same in both of these, but you can see how the difference is. Again, the foot hasn't had, this is more of a leisurely jog. This is a quick dash. So like the foot hasn't been pulled all the way forward yet. So we get this sharp angular line of action forward with the leg. And also let's note the foot is pointing a lot more downward now. So I wonder if I can turn this rotate off. Can I? No, it's still pointed backwards. Never mind. Let's undo that. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. So let's go ahead and get this posed though. So we want to bring this forward. That'll bring the knee up, right? And so, oh, let me keyframe that, frame 10. On this, rotate my hip more onto my right side and down a little bit. Because we're kicking off from this foot, so I'm making it so that we're seeing that the power is coming from back here. So that's important. And then this should already have a keyframe. Yep. Cool. Let me double check. I didn't move this on the Z, right? Or the X? No. Okay. Cool. Cool. Yes, she is kind of clipping up there, but don't worry about it. It's just her knee coming up to her chest. There's a little bit of clip there too. Okay. So now we're gonna strike our contact. So again, or not our contact, rather. Sorry, our up pose. So we just did our kickoff. We need to do our up pose. So you can see neither of the feet are on the ground, right? And also, if we notice, so our kickoff here, the hips, kickoff, the hips are slightly lower than they were before, but again, the knee is so high up here that it's not really touching the ground. Here you can see the foot is way more straight down in this pose, but this foot is way farther back, just straight out behind us. So let's go to frame 15. And then what we're gonna do, this leg is gonna be up and behind us. Oh, you know, yeah, it's fine. I'll bring this back sort of like this, keyframe this. So I'm gonna bring the hips down just a touch, like we saw in the example. We'll do that. Bring this forward. Love that for her. We'll turn our foot pivot to 0. I think the foot is what? Yeah, it's just slightly pivoted down towards the ground. So, whoops. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna get rid of our rotate here. There we go. Bring this down. Bring this forward. So I think it's getting pissed off because my pull vector is not directly in front of the knee. So okay, I think that's about good there. So we got a nice 90-degree bend there. This is supposed to be pretty straight out behind her, so I'm gonna do something like this. Although they shouldn't be that. Let me double check. Oh no, this one's pretty high off the ground. Okay. So yeah, this is probably fine. And then this might be. I'm gonna adjust this down a little bit. And I'm just gonna bring the hips overall down a little bit too. I think it's a touch high. And so now, let's go to our pelvis. So now we're getting ready to drop our weight down. So we gotta rotate our hips so that we're biasing them the other direction. Whoops. And drop their weight down onto this leg. So I'm going to neutralize the hips actually, because on the next one we're going to drop our weight down. And in fact, let me see. Yep, the hip sockets are even on this. Okay. So then that brings us to our next contact pose. So let's again click on our reference video. One frame forward, another contact. This time with our right leg behind us. So again, we're striking out with, oh, also let's double check how do our hips move. So the hips go down a little bit more as they touch the ground. Makes sense to me. So honestly, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, because this is just the location of my hips in space. I'm just going to copy this and paste it on 20, because it doesn't really matter. Ah, very interesting. That's slightly up from even this pose. Okay. So we'll bring this up a little bit more. Okay. Then here, so we're dropped down. So then let's get this. Whoops. Zeroed out, so it's on the ground. Let's get our foot pivot set the other way. And let's get this about lined up with here, which is about how I had it on the other one. Cool, so that's lining up. Then we got for this one, here we can, no need to reinvent the wheel. Whoops, no. Okay. See, foot pivot 10, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, great.
That was super nice. I love that.
All right, and then distance-wise, I think it's about like this. Oh, our toe is much more pointed backwards on this one. And it doesn't need to perfectly match the other one. So anyway, on this one, so we got that done. We have the hips done. We got to fix this. So again, this time we're going to make sure our rotated to the white, or to the right, to the right if you're looking at the front. So we're going to drop our weight onto this foot. We're also going to bias now our hips towards this side, because that's where our weight is being bared. So now, that being done, scale this down to 19 frames. So here's what this will look like. Again, the legs you'll see will swap at the end of this, because obviously I only did half of the cycle, because I did 5 out of the 8 frames. I'm going to do the rest in a second, but you'll see. So really truck in there. So again, you'll just continue this. I'm on frame 20 now. So frame 20 was the second contact pose, this time with your left in front. So now I'm just going to go ahead and move this forward. So 5 and 25. And we'll click on this. Oh, whoops, we'll click on this. Click on 5. So you can see again the foot that is in front. I think I have it like 5 units in front of, yeah, so again, just in front of the hip. Foot pivot set to 0. Let's, whoops, lock that in. So if we click, yep, more or less, yep, Yep. So again, if we look at this, you can see how this foot has been brought forward. So on this one, we can go ahead and just do a little bit of that. Keyframe. Let's see how it's... Oh, also it's up. Probably a little bit more rotate. Oh, we can see much tighter, much more straight angle. That's a better call. So you can see I'm not even really using my reference right now. I'm just going off of what I've already done, which is, you know, based on my reference. And so, oh, another thing that I didn't do, we want to, I think, drop this down a little bit. Oh, maybe not. I wonder. Nope. Hips are the same here. Okay, fair enough. So our hips do go up a little bit on that one. Great. So we got that keyframed. Let's see. How did we tweak this? Probably just a little less rotation in the hips as the legs coming back. Still dropping our weight onto this leg. Okay. So as the hips are evening out, as our legs are transiting, we're trying to even out the hips. Or even the rotate as they rotate from the front to the back. Okay, so let's see our comparison between poses. They should pretty much be very similar except with the feet swapped, which essentially they look like. Yeah, cool. All right, and let's again make sure, yep, that's keyframed and this is keyframed. Okay. So we'll move forward again. And if we're looking at the reference, right, we're now on, we just did this. So we're on our next kickoff pose, right? And you can see that the hip for the leg that's up in the air is above the hip for the one that's on the ground. And we're just going to flip that. Oh, actually, this is the right side of the pose. So yeah, you'll just follow this. Ha ha ha.